Hello, this is Miss Cindy from the Alexandria Museum of Art. Welcome to another AMoA Family Friday. This week, we are going to be talking about another art element. So far, we have talked about color, we've talked about line and shape and value and form. We've covered 5 of them, there's 7. So today, we are going to be talking about texture. Now, texture describes how something feels or looks like it might feel. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first, I have a really fun book that's going to help us think about texture. And our book this week is by Maria Putri, and it's called Scratchie, a Touch and Feel Cat Venture. How many of you like kitties? You have a kitty at home? I've had kitties before. I like them very much. Hi there, human. I'm Scratchie the Cat. And just like my name, I like to scratch stuff to keep my claws super sharp. Let's scratch things together. We should start with something nearby. Ooh, I like this doormat. Come on, human. Use your claws and let's try scratching it. Oh, it's cool. You can actually feel it. It feels sort of like fabric. It's kind of soft. Okay. Shall we climb to high places next? How about this wooden table? Uh-oh. So he's scratching the table. The grown-ups aren't going to be happy. There's usually interesting stuff up here. Check out this blue cup. Ooh, feels like plastic. And this rough paper towel. It is rough. I also like to scratch shiny things. Ooh, have you ever scratched a pot or something? It makes an awful noise. Or something soft and squishy like this sponge. Oh, that is super squishy. Cardboard boxes are one of my favorites. And you can feel the cardboard boxes. They're kind of ridgy. Uh-oh. Look what he's done to the room. I'm telling you, grown-ups aren't going to be excited about this cat right now. Oh, well, I guess we're done for the day. I wonder what we should scratch tomorrow. Probably fewer things for the grown-ups to clean up. Oh, I know. How about me? Oh, he's so soft. Okay. So those are some examples of some different textures. Now, the first thing we're going to do is have a little art element review, and then we're going to talk about texture. Artists use the elements of art to create amazing works of art. The first element is line, like the lines that Walter Anderson used to create these fish and its scales in his woodcut. And lines create shapes, like the shapes that Nicholas Monroe used to create his dancers in this painting. A 3-dimensional shape is a form, like the form of this Dale Chihuly glass sculpture. In this Amy Guidry painting, she actually suggests form by using another element called value. Value is the darks and lights in an artwork, like those in this Elmore Morgan Sr. photograph. Value can also be used to create a mood in a painting, like the spooky somber mood in the Steamboat painting by George Rodrigue. Another valuable tool that artists use is color. Francis Pave uses color to create depth and interest as well as mood and energy in this painting. All of the elements we've talked about so far can be used to create space. Space refers to the space inside an object, the positive space, and the space outside of the object, the negative space. Look at how artist Arthur Secunda energizes the space around this figure using color, line, and shape. Last element is texture. Texture refers to how something looks like it might feel. Notice the bumpy texture of the feathers in this Morris Taft Thomas piece. Let's start by talking about the two different kinds of texture. There's the texture you can feel with your hands, like in this sculpture by Clyde Connell. If you could touch it, you'd find it was very, very bumpy. We call this tactile texture. It's the texture you can feel with your hand. Some textures, like the wet water texture of this Emery Clark piece, can only be seen and not touched. If you touched this painting, you would just feel canvas. You wouldn't feel wetness. That's visible texture. It's texture you can see. Just remember, at the museum, art's for looking at, not for touching. Now, let's make our own texture designs. You're going to need a few pieces of paper, about 4, some black construction paper, something to trace a circle with, a pencil, a ruler or something to make a straight line with. You're going to need some crayons, a glue stick, or of course some Elmer's glue. Either's fine. All right, we're ready to go. First, we're going to look for some tactile textures, like this brick outside my house. It's very rough and bumpy. And then I'm going to show you how to do some rubbings by using a piece of paper. You're going to place it on top of whatever you want to capture the texture of, and just color with the side of your crayon. So instead of holding it on the point, you're just going to sort of hold it sideways and start coloring. And you're going to capture the texture of whatever's underneath the paper. Give yourself a whole sheet of paper. I caught this cool wooden texture. Now I'm going to capture the texture of these leaves. They have a cool veiny texture that I think will be really interesting. I'm going to lay them out on my table, just enough to fit underneath a sheet of paper. And once I have them organized the way I want them, I'm going to then take a piece of paper and just lay that piece of paper on top. And as I start to color, I'm going to again color with the side of my crayon, the side of the top of my crayon, and I am going to just color over those. I'm going to hold my hand on top of the leaf so it doesn't slip. You want to hold it down firmly. You don't have to color very hard when you do this. In fact, if you color sort of softly, you'll get a nice texture rubbing. So look, I've got lots of veiny leaves. That'll be cool to use for my design later. All right, now we are going to actually do some visible textures. So we're going to think about ways that we can draw textures instead of doing rubbings of things that actually have texture. So you might think of some different words that describe textures and think of how to draw them. I have chosen furry. So I was thinking about my dog and how the texture of her fur is like really kind of a lot of straight lines. And if you can just draw them randomly all over your sheet, look, it looks like fur. So that's a good one to try. Next, I am going to try scaly. So a good way to make scales is by making diamonds. And you make the diamonds so that they're in a line touching each other on the sides. Just make a row of diamonds. And then when you're finished with that, you're just going to make another row of diamonds underneath it that connect to that top row. And you're just going to keep doing that. And it gives you kind of a scaly texture. So when you're making textures, you just kind of want to look at what you're making the textures of and see what kind of lines and shapes those textures make. There's a bunch of different ones you can use. Think of some words that describe textures and then look that up and think of different ways that you can make a texture. Some other examples might be spiky or fuzzy. So do some exploring and some research and think about what kind of textures you might want to make. There's my scaly texture and my furry texture. And now I've got all my textures collected. You want to collect about 5 textures. And we are going to now take all the textures. We've got scaly and furry. We've got veiny. I actually made some extra leaves. And we've got the wood texture. I guess that would be woody. And we've got the bumpy texture of the bricks. Okay, so now, if you remember before, we did a trick where we turned our rectangular paper into a square. You don't have to do this step, but it does make a nice square piece of paper. So you want to fold your top corner down so that it lines up with the edge of your paper. You can have a grown-up help with that if you need to. And then you're going to draw a line at the bottom of that triangle. Now we're going to cut along that line with our scissors. And now we have a square piece of paper. It's a really handy trick. Okay, so now we are going to make an X across the page, going from corner to corner. We're just going to use our ruler for that, or any kind of straight edge. Hold your ruler down firmly as you draw. Now I'm going to use that crease as my next line. And in the center where they connect, that's the center of our paper. I'm going to put my top lid down there, and I'm going to trace it. This is going to tell me where the center of my page is. That's important because we're making a mandala. A mandala is a circular design that starts at the center of your paper. So I'm going to choose one of my things that I think will make a nice circle. And I've chosen my scales. And I'm going to now cut that out after I trace the circle. And I'm going to just start arranging things on the paper. Now, our paper has 4 triangular sections. To make a mandala, you're going to start in the center with any shape, and you're going to continue around. In each triangle, you're going to place a shape. So each time you create a shape, you need to make at least 4 of them, 1 for each section. So now I've made some triangles out of my bumpy texture. And so I made 1 triangle, and I like the shape of that. So to get more, I am going to just trace that triangle. This is going to give me triangles that are basically the same shape. They don't have to be perfect. So whatever you do in one quadrant or area of the section of the paper, you are going to continue doing in the other section. So we have 4 sections. We need 4 shapes. Now I'm going to do some crescent shapes. So that's just sort of a smile line connected to another smile line. And I'm going to do 4 of those. And right now, before I glue, I'm just trying to see how I want it arranged on the paper. Remember, whatever you do in one section, you're going to do in another section. Now for this shape, I only have room for small shapes now. So I'm going to do a small teardrop, and I'm going to do more of them. Since I need something for 4 sections, I'm going to do 2 for each section. So 2 times 4 is 8. That gives us 8 teardrops, 2 for each section. Now I'm going to start gluing it down. I'm going to glue all over the back. I'm going to press it down firmly. And I think I'm going to move all these things off my paper because I think it will make it easier. Just continue gluing your items down the way you have planned. Repeating the shapes in each section. And now I've decided to color the inside of my rubbing, the places where there's white spots. So I'm using complementary colors. If you have questions about what complementary colors are, you can go check out my other videos about color. What textures did you find this week? And what other art elements did we use other than texture? Look carefully. Did you use color? What about line? Did you use shapes? We definitely used texture. Can you find any other art elements that I might have left out? Thanks for joining me for another AMoA Family Friday. Starting this next week, there won't be a Family Friday video, but we are going to keep bringing them to you monthly. So your next Family Friday video will be on the 4th Friday of July, so look for it then. And you will be getting Family Friday videos every month from this point forward. And we are going to keep learning about the elements. Our next element is space. So join us next time to see what we do for that. All right, guys, it was really fun today. Y'all be safe, be well, and be kind to each other. And I'll see you soon.